Release planning is a fairly standard Agile practice where a team gets together to figure out what's going to go into the next production release of their software and how it is they're going to build those features that go into the software. I'd like to explore this important practice by talking about 5 common misconceptions about release planning. And the very first misconception is that the main goal of doing release planning is to produce a release plan. That's a logical assumption, but a faulty one. Instead, the value of release planning is in the activity itself, in the conversations that happen as we are grappling with this question of what should we build and how are we going to build it. I'm reminded of a quote that's attributed to Dwight D. Eisenhower, where he said, "In preparing for battle, I have found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." And that's how I feel about release planning. It's not the artifact that pops out at the end that's the key thing, but rather it's the activity of mutually working together to come up with that artifact, to create at least one solution to our problem that produces the value. And that's tied to misconceptions number 2 and number 3. Misconception number 2 is that you can do release planning with just a subset of the team. Get a product manager, maybe a business analyst, a couple customer representatives, and you can put the plan together. That misses the whole point of the value being in the conversation. Sure, you'll get some good results out of it, you'll get some kind of plan out of that, but half of the team will miss the benefit of these conversations. More importantly, we'll miss the varying perspectives that can come when you put together business people with an understanding of the domain and the market and the customer, product people that are good at marrying technical solutions with business problems, and then engineers who are fantastic about knowing this will work, this won't work, this costs this much, this is easy, this is hard, and here's the latest and greatest tool set we have to work with. When you can get all those people together in a conversation, a planning exercise where you're brainstorming, where you're trying to innovate, you can get some powerful things coming out of that conversation. Misconception number 3 is that release planning is just an estimation exercise. Someone's figured out what we ought to do, we just need to translate these requirements into user stories, estimate them, and we're done. And again, that misses the point. There is a piece of release planning which involves estimation. That usually comes after we do some joint brainstorming. We do divergent thinking about the problem we're trying to solve. We get a bunch of user stories, we put some estimates on them, we put some constraints around what we think the team's capacity is, and then we put all those pieces together and try to answer the question of if we have a shot at building what it is we want to build. But the estimation is just a small piece of this overall activity, which is really mutually exploring options together and jointly trying to converge on at least a good plan of attack based on a shared understanding of what it is we've set out to accomplish. Misconception number 4 is that once you've done release planning and produced a release plan, that release plan shouldn't change much after release planning. And that's again patently false. The Agile Manifesto tells us that we value responding to change over following a plan. So just the fact that our plan is going to change 30, 40, 50, 70% as we go through and execute during the release doesn't mean that our planning activity was useless. On the contrary, the foundation that is set by these release planning conversations, by learning together and developing a shared understanding of the problem space and the potential solutions. That actually puts us in a great position to be able to accommodate new learning and new understandings and new ideas as we execute the release. So don't get too bothered by your release plan changing dramatically as you execute. And then misconception number 5 is that we should only do release planning, we only need to do release planning at the beginning of a release. Now, many teams do adopt some sort of quarterly cadence every 2 or 3 months releasing, and they set aside a week specifically to do release planning in between those releases. But really, anytime we want to step away from the day-to-day, the tactical, and explore a problem together and explore potential solutions is a good time for a release planning exercise. It doesn't need to take a whole week like you would do at the beginning of a quarter. You can do it in 2 or 3 hours in the morning. Someone brings a new feature idea, you gather this group of people together, this cross-functional team, you brainstorm some stories, you talk about possibilities, pros and cons of different options, and you then incorporate that into your overall plan of attack. Let me leave you with one more powerful idea, which is that the main purpose of planning, or release planning in this case, is not certainty, but rather confidence. What we're trying to do with release planning is not to come up with the perfect plan that tells us exactly how long everything's going to take and assures us that what we're guaranteed to get at the end. Rather, we want to come away with this sense of confidence that we can do this, that we've put our best thinking into this problem, we have a good plan of attack, we see at least one way to get to the end, and we're confident that we can change and adjust and learn as we go. And if you come away from a release planning session with that type of feeling, then you know you've done it well.